Now back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650.
Welcome back to The Law Show here on CL 650. I'm Sterling Fox. Two lawyers in the studio, citizenship and immigration specialists, both Rudy Kisher and Alex Stojkovic from Maynard Kisher Stojkovic in Vancouver, downtown at 1168 Hamilton Street, right there in Yaletown, and online at vancouverlaw.ca in the aftermath of a super long Canadian election and some very interesting results. We're here today to just ponder what might happen. And one of the things we've talked about, Alex, as part of the discussion today has been the refugee matter that came up in the course of the election and what the various parties and players had to say with respect to commitments. But a lot of Canadians looking across at the source of the crisis, Syria and the Middle East, and what's happening in Europe, this exodus, this incredible wave of people moving into Europe, we are in some ways strangely thankful for our geographical location, but also a little fearful of being overwhelmed as we're starting to see in some European countries.
Well, I think the lessons that we can learn from Europe, there's the hot button sort of here is a wave of people, here's a wave of newcomers, and there's the fears and the visceral reactions that we have of sympathy sometimes, as well as in other people's, there's the fear element. But quite apart from that, from a policy perspective, I think everybody needs to take a look at it. I mean, to me, the European challenge with their refugees at the moment is ultimately a security and political issue as much as it is a legal one.
Right.
And it poses some challenges that it would be interesting for us to consider carefully here in Canada. Let me give you an example. The next government is going to have to deal with enormous pressure from the United States to continue with information sharing. Information sharing between Canada and the U.S.
Oh, this is our North American Continental Agreement, right?
The Continental Agreements
right, okay.
are pushing further and further so that we effectively, the end game being that one day we enforce U.S. law and they enforce Canadian law, and we, have one big sort of customs-free, border-free union, much like the European Union. Now, is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? Some of the challenges with that we see with the European Union right now.
Okay.
Last weekend, because of the refugee crisis, Croatia and Hungary closed the borders to Croatia.
That's right, they did.
And your listeners may say, well, what's that got to do with anything? Well, Hungary and Croatia signed an agreement that they're not supposed to have border controls between them. They're both European Union members.
That's right.
What happens if we've already made these commitments, we've created a common border, and we have problems like this? These are lessons that we need to look at. What is the European Union? How are they dealing with it? What do we need to learn from them? I mean, I think the first lesson I think that we have to take a look at is that the European Union has handled this poorly. You need a common policy on dealing with migrants.
And you've got 26 different policies right now, don't you?
My worry is that in the United States, you have no policy dealing with migrants. You have ad hominem nonsense from certain Republican candidates. You have coherent but unrealistic ones from other Republican candidates. And then you have a largely dysfunctional bureaucracy that is never put together, that has survived Congress and congressional debates, and almost no legislative groundswell on either direction on immigration. And that's who is going to be later dictating our policy.
Mm-hmm.
So before you give up sovereignty of your borders, you need to consider carefully what you're actually doing. The European Union sounded like a great idea if you were Greek a decade ago or 20 years ago. But on this point, where everyone is using you as the transit source, in a time when you're in crisis, now it doesn't seem like such a bad idea.
I must stop you both. And why wasn't this brought up in the election campaign? We only had 78 flippin' days to talk about stuff like this. What about forfeiture of our borders and our sovereignty under future agreements with the states, Rudy? Why wasn't that brought up?
I don't think it's something that, is on anybody's radar screen right now, right? I mean, there was enough other issues going out there that it will be coming up with. We're going to have we're moving, and Alex would love to talk about this right now, is we're moving to a point where if you're coming to Canada, you're going to have to get an electronic approval to come to Canada. So if you're not from the United States, any other country, you're going to have to go online before you actually get on the plane and get this little visa. So if you're an English citizen who's coming, for your entire life, being able to just get on a plane, you won't be able to do that anymore. It'll take, it's supposed to take less than 2 minutes. Sign on with your name, and they're going to run a little check, and they're going to see.
Of course, there's a fee.
A little fee. It's all going to be,
it's
self-funding. It's all self-funding.
Of course.
But the idea being that we're going to keep people out that could harm us or that are on certain lists or that have criminal records out.
Understood.
And why not do it here, right? So we're going to push that off, and that's coming. But I don't think
that's coming soon. That's coming in March of 2016, and this applies
regardless of whose political flag we're flying on top of the Peace Tower.
This applies to every country that is visa exempt now. Okay, so if you think about this, for your listeners, this applies to the Brits, this applies to citizens of France, Japan, Australia, New Zealand.
All our Commonwealth cousins.
Everybody excepting Americans. Am I right about that?
Yeah, the Americans.
Everybody but Americans are caught by this.
And so what's going to happen is people that have come to Canada for years that may have a small infraction. They may have had a DUI from 30 years ago when they were 19 years old.
Right.
All of a sudden they're going to have their flight booked. They're going to have the holidays planned to spend, $5,000 here with their family. They're going to, I have to get this stupid thing. I better do it half an hour before. And all of a sudden, you can't come on because we have access to the English records. They show you have a DUI from 30 years ago, and you won't be able to get on the plane. And you'll have to call Maynard Kisher Stojkovic to help you out with that problem. Right? And I hate to do a shameless plug like that, but that's exactly the situation.
But will your firm and others be able to provide remedies for these people who are getting jerked around at the 11th hour because of some ancient infraction?
Maybe.
Some
maybe
advice.
Not.
It depends.
Sometimes it may take time to get these things resolved. But people, in the European context, the challenge that you have with waves of people coming, and you have a piecemeal answer where, Greece or Serbia, knowing full well that they're not interested in staying there, basically keeps shoveling them forward to go to the next country. That realistically cannot work. You can't do that within a common border situation. We're learning that now in the European Union.
Just putting immigrants on a conveyor belt to Germany or Sweden.
Everybody has a number, right?
Everybody's got a number.
And when Merkel said 800,000 to 1 million with no sort of process of how we're going to get these people here, I mean, I could tell you when the UN has to make a decision, having worked there for a year, and they're deciding whether they're going to grant a certain sort of, section of the population some sort of status, it has to be done on a calculation. Well, what's going to happen? Because the minute we do that, there's going to be phone calls and emails, and everybody's going to be coming because, where you've got one, you've got thousands of others that are looking, seeing, well, does that person make it? Were they able to get over there? If they got there, we're coming next.
The one thing that we know, just looking at this unfold in Europe, not only are we witnessing history in the making, because this is unprecedented in terms of movements in this century, it's also a very, as you say, Alex, it's an incredibly important lesson for us in North America to learn about what's going to happen down the road in our own backyard. Gentlemen, we always appreciate an opportunity to talk immigration and citizenship matters, and we'll look forward to another chat and, some more policy issues next time around as well. Alex Stojkovic and Rudy Kisher, good to see you guys.
Yeah, great to see you, Sterling.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next Sunday morning on The Law Show.